We are live, and here is my gardening hat. I've been picking blackberries today. At the moment, I'm waiting for the tea kettle to calm so I can make my instant coffee. And I'm waiting for people to tune in. It's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and we are live from beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. Hi, Henning. My connection is unstable, stupid, bad, evil machine. I am wasting my premium service to do this live feed and stable. I blame YouTube and Verizon. But what are you going to do? I can't get anything better. So, once the tea kettle calls me, I'll go make my instant coffee. I wore my gardening hat because I picked 4 cups. Counted 4 cups of blackberries. Hi, Strontium. I'm doing okay. That is not spelled Donig, it's doing. And 4 cups, counted 1, 2, 3, 4 cups of blackberries from my wild blackberry vine. Hang on, the tea kettle's calling. Okay, and all right. Now the coffee, so you might notice a slightly new background over there. Here, over there. One of my other bookcases, which I had to move to make room for a cabinet that would not fit in the kitchen. So it's around the corner and in the living room. Let's see if I can show you the cabinet. There it is, right there. It would fit in the spot I had for it, but the door would not open, so it was kind of useless in that spot. Hi, Kipple. Good morning. Kipple Craig. And my typos are getting really bad today. Well, once again, I picked 4 cups of blackberries from my wild blackberry vine. They're soaking in water and vinegar, partly to clean them and partly to make sure that any mold spores that might be on them are killed. We don't like moldy jam, do we? I already made 1 batch of blackberry jam, and tonight I shall make a 2nd batch. Not sure whether I'm up to making a 3rd. Making jam is not all that difficult, but you have to stand there and stir the pot. And I was born with a bad back. I had a mild case of spina bifida, so it's a miracle that I can walk. Never been good at picking things up or carrying things. Hey, Tora, kitty, come here and say hi to your fans. I got treats. Come on, your people are waiting for you to make an appearance. Yes. All right, I'll give you a couple treats first, because cats have no patience and they don't wait. Tora supervised my work while I was picking the blackberries, didn't you? Come here and say hi to the people, okay? Yeah, they want to see your pretty face. There, here. She says, no, I don't want to. You're being mean to your fans, you know. Okay, let's get you some more treats. There, here, kid. Yes, you're a good kitty. Oh, look, Sweetie came over. I can't show you Sweetie because she's timid. She's a long-haired black tuxedo kitty. Oh, I'm sweating already. It's from coming in from the sun. Yes, we worship our cats and they know it. Hi, Sleepy Dave. Good to see you too. Uh, let's see. So, anyway, 4 cups of blackberries, soaking in water with vinegar. Ordinarily, they say to put a 1/4 cup of vinegar in a whole sink full of water, but I use the big Tupperware bowl or my ringware bowl, which holds about 6 cups, maybe 8, and I still put in a 1/4 cup of vinegar. Sorry about that. To make darn sure that my jam does not have any nasties on it. Also, since I'm picking them and they're wild, there's all kinds of little bits of stuff to pull out of the berries. Nothing nasty, just you don't want dirt, rocks, or leaves in your jam, right? Oh, the cats left. They ate their treats and left in grates. So, anyway, next step tonight, after processing the jars, in other words, sterilizing the jam jars, you put the lids and seals. I don't just put the seals in a bowl or a pan because they get stuck to each other. So I leave them in their little ring lids and I put them in a bowl or pan of warm water to um, activate the seals. The jars, little 8-ounce canning jars. I like the quilted ones, they don't break when I drop them. Put them in a water bath, big, huge pot. They make them for canning, even, except the 8 ounces don't. They just fall right through the canning rack, so forget the rack. At least 10 minutes in boiling water. And since I'm at an elevation of close to 5,000 feet, I do 15 to 20 minutes. And they make special tongs to lift the jars out without burning yourself or dropping the jars. And of course, you empty the water out and you set you have a clean, sterile towel on your counter, a tea towel or a flour bag towel on the countertop, and you put the jars on that. And when they're hot enough, I mean cool enough to touch, you flip them over upside down so that any leftover water runs out and nothing from the air in your kitchen gets in. Okay, now the jam making part. Now I started doing it according to the recipe that came with the pectin. And that was a good start, but I've been learning for 5 years or so and playing with the recipes and different fruits. Sometimes I make a batch with 6 cups of fruit, but that fills about 10 jam jars. And it's easier to deal with 4 cups and make 6 or 7 jars of jam rather than 9 or 10. Anyway, this is not in the recipe, but I add 2 cups of apple juice, unsweetened apple juice, to 4 cups of blackberries. Now, your blackberries are pretty acid, so they're a pretty safe fruit for canning. But even so, you always add a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. Either juice some lemons or buy some lemon juice. If you're making a 6 cup batch, you need at least a 1/3 cup of lemon juice. More, if you go a little over, that's better than going a little under. Lemon juice helps to preserve the color and the flavor, and again, it resists any kind of spoiling. Now, I've never heard of anyone getting botulism from jam, but I'm not taking a chance. And I don't want my jam to get moldy. It should last about a year unopened and a couple of weeks in the refrigerator after you open it. Anyway, now here's the secret ingredient: cinnamon. Ooh, pickled veggies. Guys, I'm clumsy this morning. Interesting. Mom used to slice up the cucumber and store the slices in a bowl of vinegar in the fridge. Not that she liked it that way, but she knew her kids wouldn't eat it. Us of cucumbers on purpose. And then when she was pregnant with my baby sister, she kept buying cheap, cheap, nasty peach flavored ice cream. We didn't eat that either. Anyway, the apple juice helps to extend the fruit to make it not so thick that you can't spread it. Because the jam does the blackberries especially tend to thicken up and clump together if you don't add apple juice. But the secret ingredient is cinnamon. And I can't tell you how much. But before I put in the cinnamon, I add 3 or 4 tablespoons of a special pectin that's made for low or no sugar jam. Now, some people swear by this brand or that brand. I get the Ball brand of low or no sugar pectin because it's readily available and I don't have to spend 20 or 30 bucks on a huge bag of it. I can just get a little jar that makes a few batches of jam. Well, with 4 cups of fruit, 3 tablespoons of this pectin should be enough to make it thicken. With the so three tablespoons should be enough, but I'll check it later. With the 6 cup batch I made the other day, I used 4 tablespoons of pectin. It might be a little loose, but not runny. Okay, so you stir in the pectin 1 tablespoon at a time. You kind of sprinkle it over the top. Can't see my hand down. Go around and sprinkle it. Get your slotted spoon. Trust me, you want a slotted spoon or you'll have jam flying out of the pan onto your walls when you stir it. A spoon with holes, a big one, a big utensil sized spoon. So you stir in your pectin 1 tablespoon at a time. Set the burner on your, in a big pan. You want the fruit to come up no more than halfway up the pan. I prefer about a third of the height of the pan, hence 4 cups instead of 6 of the fruit. And once all 3 tablespoons of pectin are stirred in, sprinkle some cinnamon over the top. And I say some because I don't know, it's at least a tablespoon. Stir that in. Set the burner on your stove to medium heat and keep stirring at least once in a while. You want to scrape the bottom and the sides so that you don't end up with all the pectin and sugar stuck to the sides of the pan and your jam running like syrup, unless you want syrup. Well, anyway, once it comes to a rolling boil, and you better have your sugar canister and a measuring cup ready. I actually have a teacup that is Corelle ware, so it doesn't break when I drop it. Just makes a mess of sugar all over the floor because the sugar, they'll tell you use exactly the right amount. No, we could use no sugar and this pectin would work. We just want to sweeten the jam. So at 1 cup at a time, I stir in 3 cups of sugar with my slotted spoon, pouring with one hand, and I sometimes switch and pour with the right and stir with the left. And get it back to a rolling boil. While stirring, now here's the real trick. You want a heavy, heavy spoon. Heavy metal spoon. You want it cold. Keep it in the freezer or the fridge if you want. Make it super cold because you're going to test your jam. You're going to dip the spoon in, pull it out, and see, it's okay if it drips a little. That's all right. But if it just runs off the spoon, you're going to need 1 more tablespoon of pectin or 1 more cup of sugar. And once it cools enough that you're not going to burn your tongue and the roof of your mouth, taste it. This is where you decide whether you want more cinnamon. It's also where you add either a teaspoon of powdered cloves or a teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice. You might think 5-spice, Chinese 5-spice is expensive, but you don't use that much. In fact, you can get away with half a teaspoon of that in your 4-cup batch of jam. Stir those in. Now, if you're really adventurous, you can put in whole cloves, but I don't like them in my jam. And I'm certainly not going to try to strain them out. But if I were adventurous enough, I'd get a little mesh bag and tie it up with cloves in it and drop it into the jam. Anyway, at this point, you need to keep on stirring that jam for about a minute, at least 1 minute while it's at a rolling boil. Now, here at 5,000 feet, that doesn't happen. You just stir it and it quits boiling. So you leave it alone for a minute. And when it starts bubbling again, you stir it again. So it runs to about 3 minutes instead of one. And keep dipping your tasting spoon in the jam to make sure that you like the flavor. Now, if you want, you can enhance the flavor with just a pinch of nutmeg. If you want to make it taste sweeter, put in just a pinch of chili powder or even black pepper. And one more trick is just a pinch of salt. Really add something to the flavor without being, without upsetting the salt Nazis. Hi, Carolina. Oops. I was typing, but my cursor wasn't in chat. Well, anyway, once you've killed your back and your arms, standing there stirring the pot, and making sure that you scrape the sides and the bottom of your pot. Strontium I learned by doing. Anyway, turn off the heat. This is where I love my gas stove. I hate electric. Even with an electric that supposedly shuts off instantly and all that stuff, I can't cook on electric. I just can't. I end up with things just barely edible or totally inedible. Anyway, you want your funnel, a wide funnel that's made for pouring jam into jars, and a ladle. Now, your standard ladle holds about 4 ounces, so each of your 8-ounce jars will hold 2 ladles of jam. And you want to leave some space at the top, about a 1/4 inch. You don't want it filled to the top. You do not do that. And you put on your after the jam's in it, you put on your seal and your ring. And at this point, the jar's hot, so set it aside. And once all your jars are filled and have their seals and rings on them, get a kitchen towel, a nice terry cloth towel, to hold the jar while you tighten the lid finger tight, not, you know, don't try to murder it or strangle it. Just tight so that when you put it back in the water bath, the water won't get into your jam. And you put all your jam jars, well, my pot holds 4 or 5 at a time, jars. Anyway, you get them into the water bath, put the lid on. I use one of those vented lids with little holes because I found that if I don't do that, sometimes when the water boils, it'll pop the lid off the pot and the lid goes flying. It's really awful when it goes behind the stove. Anyway, once the water in the pot is boiling again, turn down the heat to low. And the directions say 10 minutes to process your jam. Make sure that seals are tight and the jam is totally sterilized inside the jars. But I'm at almost 5,000 feet elevation, so I do 20 minutes. And then you turn off the heat and wait a few minutes so you don't get scalded when you take the lid off and take the jars out. You don't want the water boiling and jumping out at your hands. And you get your special tongs made for lifting canning jars and lift them out carefully, one at a time. Set them on your tea towel on your counter. And then, once they're all there, take your tea towel and gently rub the lids so they don't get water spots. And then you leave them alone for at least 24 hours. After that, you take one jar of jam, turn it upside down, and make sure it doesn't run down to the lid. That means it didn't set up, and you need to Pour all your jam back into the pot and cook it for a minute with another tablespoon of pectin and maybe a little sugar. Always taste it as you go along. Once you add the sugar, you can start tasting before it actually boils as long as the sugar's totally stirred in. Make sure you like the um, spices that you've added. Yeah, grape jam sounds nice, Carolina. Um, when I have, see, our local food bank gives away tons of grape juice. It's, unsweetened and no additives. So I make grape jelly from it. Takes more pectin to get juice to set up, but oh, it's yummy. And I love grape juice, but there's only one of me. I can't drink a gallon a day. Anyway, I learned to make jam by doing it. Now, when mom made jam, all I ever learned from her was stir the pot for 6 minutes. Oh, you don't have to stir it for 6 minutes if you are not skimping on the ingredients like pectin and lemon juice. And in those days, she didn't add apple juice because it wasn't in the instructions. Now, down at sea level or thereabouts, the final boil is about a minute. You can go 2 minutes, even though the directions say to do it exactly 1 minute. The main thing is to have the right pectin. Make sure it's made for low or no sugar jam. Otherwise, you could have a disaster. See ya, Kipple. This will be up for replay. Um, anyway, fast forward years later, my brother was told by the doctor that he was pre-diabetic. And he loves to have a slice of toast with jam every morning. Well, for a while, Smucker's was making jam with half the sugar. He didn't like the stuff that's artificially sweetened, and I don't either. I don't want chemicals in my food. So I experimented. I had this blackberry vine with tons of berries. I think he wanted raspberry, but I don't do raspberries. I'm not into them. Well, as a jam, they're okay, but the berries, to my mind, are rather tasteless. My wild blackberries are tartar and have more flavor than the stuff you get at the store. Anyway, so I picked a bunch of blackberries and started making jam and experimenting. And my first few batches ran like syrup because I didn't know what I was doing, but they tasted good. And remember, the secret ingredient, number one secret ingredient, is cinnamon. And every time you taste it, you decide whether you want more cinnamon. And add it just a little at a time, like maybe a tablespoon to start, and then a teaspoon at a time to boost the flavor. I've gotten to the point where I just shake the jar over the pan. I'm pretty good at estimating. Anyway, I tried all kinds of different things. Oranges, apples. My apple butter is darn good too. Cinnamon and cloves to flavor it. And when I and we're up to it and I have real apples, I peel, core, and cut up the apples and blend them in the food processor to make my apple butter. And if I don't quite have enough apples, I'll add a jar of unsweetened apple sauce. You don't really need to add a lot of apple juice to applesauce, but I usually add 1 cup of apple juice to 4 cups of the smushed apples. When I use real apples, there will be a few little chunks of apple in the apple butter, and that's fine. And it proves you used real apples. But for the blackberries, it's 2 cups of apple juice to 4 cups of fruit. And remember, a lot of the liquid gets boiled away while you're boiling the jam. So if you think it's too thick when you get to the end, you're allowed to pour in 1 more cup of apple juice and stir it in real good. If you think it's too thin, a little more sugar and or a little more pectin will help. Stir it and in that case, boil it, bring it to a boil again, and then turn off the heat. Well, I don't make my apple butter chunky. It just has an occasional chunk. But yeah, I like chunky applesauce. When I make my own applesauce, it has cubes of apples because that's how they used to make it at Pickled Pete's, this little restaurant in Los Angeles. Sometimes my parents would take us there when we were kids. I doubt that it's there anymore. But they had the best homemade apple sauce with chunks of apple and not so much sugar that you couldn't taste the fruit. That's one of the points of low sugar jam. You can really taste the fruit, it isn't just sweet. Yeah, applesauce is like, mm. I used to make my apple butter the consistency of applesauce because that's how it is when you get it from the store. But people complained that it was they'd put it on their toast and it would soak in or run off and they just wanted it thicker. So now I make it thicker. Oh, Pickle Pete's had these little machines on the tables that would dispense one one thing of gum, a little tiny cardboard box. It actually had two in it, I think. Of they're like chiclets, but full size gum, but pillow shaped. And they even had these jukeboxes where you could play music at your table. Oh, it was fun. We also had hamburger handout. That would go over well in the time of COVID. It was a drive up fast food restaurant, and mostly teenage girls, but sometimes guys, would come to your car on roller skates, take your order, and then go back and when your food was done, they'd bring it to your car on this tray that hung on your car door. You'd put your driver's window down, and they'd put this tray there, and it would hang outside the car. And they had awesome hamburgers and malts, not milkshakes, real malted milk. Do you know in England, if you ask for a milkshake, well, some people know what Americans mean, but most think, what? You take some milk and shake it? It is a malted. The barley sugar, which we call malt, is what makes a malted milk. And a shake is just a shake. Let's see, what else did we have? There was some pizza place where we'd sometimes get takeout. I don't think we ever had it delivered, but I don't know. But then in Anaheim, in the starting in '65, there was Jack's Chicken Broaster. Broast meaning baked and roasted. I think what he did was cook it ahead of time and then heat it up real fast in a convection oven when you placed your order. And he also had those long, potatoes sliced the long way into quarters and roasted. Oh, and I don't know what kind of spices he put on his food, but it was awesome. And whenever the power went out, which happened a lot in those days, if there was a power outage, usually in the summer when people turned on their air conditioners, we didn't have one. Well, anyway, we'd have a block party and call for Jack's roasted chicken and potatoes. And he even knew how to make coleslaw. I am so disappointed in restaurants that don't know how to make it. They just, they slice up the cabbage, throw in some vinegar and some sugar and maybe a little mayo and stir it up and call it coleslaw. Well, in my cookbook for the cooking impaired by the cook, it's kitchen challenged by the kitchen challenged. I'm cooking impaired too, but I make good jam and good coleslaw. Dad's second wife taught me how to make coleslaw. You slice up your cabbage. You can do the strips or the little squares or whatever, but slice it up. Put it in a big bowl where you can use your hands or a couple spoons to toss it. You sprinkle on some salt. Stir it in. Well, the amount depends on how much cabbage you've got. Let it sit for at least 5 minutes. You'll see some liquid forming in the bottom of the bowl. That's the good stuff. Then you sprinkle on your sugar. Stir it in, either toss it with your hands or with a couple spoons. Don't just stir, you'll mess it up. Toss the cabbage. Pull it out of the bottom onto the top, off the sides into the middle. And then, if you're pressed for time, you can add the salt and sugar at the same time. But I like to take my time and do it well and not just acceptable. Now, when you finish that, you pour in your vinegar and not too much. Toss it and let it sit at least another 5 minutes. Now, what they do in restaurants, which drives me up the wall, they see that the coleslaw is a little too dry, so they pour in more vinegar. Ew! We are not making sauerkraut, we're making coleslaw. Cole means cabbage, by the way. Anyway, after you've let that sit at least 5 minutes, then you add your mayonnaise. And all of this is to taste, so you're allowed to taste along the way. By this time, there should be a nice pool of liquid in the bottom. Make sure that while you're tossing your cabbage, the mayonnaise gets mixed in with that liquid. That's the cabbage juice, and it's sweet and delicious and good, and mixed with the mayonnaise. Mmm, nectar of the gods. And once it's all stirred in, cover the bowl, put it in the refrigerator for about half an hour. If you can't wait, you can eat it warm, but it sets up nicely when it's chilled, kind of like your jam. Now, I like the juices, so if there's some juice in the bottom where the cabbage juice is mixed with mayonnaise, I'll pour that into a cup and drink it. It's so good. Anyway, this here show, I hope it helps with some ideas of what to do during the time of COVID. Shaken, not stirred. LOL. Now, I think it must have been an episode of Poirot. No, I take it back. It was Auntie Mame, a very old and awesome movie that I watched on YouTube recently. She ends up with her nephew, her young nephew, who's like 10 or 12 years old. And she teaches him how to make a martini. Well, I guess her boyfriend teaches him. Anyway, um, the kid says, "Don't shake it, it ruins the gin." Something like that. So he stirs it. So I don't know. I'm not much of a drinker. What I like is a fuzzy navel. When the fuzzy navel first came out in the early 70s, it was a screwdriver. That's an ounce of vodka in a glass of orange juice plus an ounce of peach schnapps, and I'm sure it was grenadine that was added then, but nowadays the recipes say to add that horrid, I can't remember the name of it. It's kind of a licorice flavored um, liqueur. Bet I can get the name of it. But what you usually get when you order a fuzzy navel is just orange juice with Galliano. Yeah. What you usually get is just orange juice with peach schnapps. But a fuzzy navel orange, and fuzzy because of the peach schnapps. Grenadine, of course, is made with pomegranate, which I learned in a literature class means the apple of Granada. It came from Spain originally, I guess, or anyway, the Europeans learned about it from Spanish people, and that's probably what Eve ate. You know, the apple, the forbidden fruit. You see, in Greek myth, Persephone, the daughter of Demeter or Ceres, um, the goddess of grain and the harvest, um, Persephone was loved by the god of the dead, Pluto, in Greek, Hades. And somehow he got her to visit him. But because he wanted to marry her. She was warned not to eat anything, but he tricked her into eating some pomegranate seeds. And the number of seeds that she ate depended upon how long the winter was in the land where they told the tale. But let's just say she ate 3 pomegranate seeds, and Hades wanted her to marry him and live with him in Hades, the underground land of the dead. Uh, well, the gods held a court hearing and decided that she would have to stay with him for 1 month for every seed that she ate. So if she ate 3 seeds, we have 3 months of winter when Persephone is down in the land of the dead with Hades, and her mother, Demeter or Ceres, is mourning the loss of her daughter. And the leaves fall off the trees, the plants die, the land grows cold, there's rain and snow, and no food because the goddess of grain is in mourning. And then in the spring, when Persephone comes back to spend the rest of the year with her mother, new blooms grow, new plants, the trees grow new leaves, they bud out and make fruit, and the grain grows. So, anyway, it seems to me that that's a reflection of the story of Eve eating the forbidden fruit and getting kicked out of paradise. It must have been a pomegranate. Well, I happen to have a bottle of peach schnapps. So, assuming that I have orange juice, I can have a fuzzy navel whenever I want. And I have a bottle of grenadine, but nowadays it's mostly fake. It's supposed to be made from pomegranate juice. And there is some pomegranate juice in this concoction, but it's mostly cherry juice. Not the same thing. But I like it with grenadine, and I don't need the vodka because I really am a throwback to my Cherokee ancestor. I don't do well with alcohol. I can have one drink. I can't have two. I remember some class reunion at a local bar down in Orange, the center of Orange County, the city of Orange. Well, anyway, I'd had 2 drinks in the course of a little more than an hour, and I thought I could drive home. I couldn't walk to my car. I said, well, if I can't walk, I certainly can't drive. So I had to stay for a while and not drink. My water's empty. Let me refill it. Now, by the way, if you make your jam with store-bought fruit, highly recommended to soak it in water with vinegar because you don't know who or what has touched it in the store or in the process of harvesting and packaging. Just a thought. Even with oranges, now I make my orange marmalade with the fruit, but I take my sorry, uh, I take my handy dandy grater and get the zest off the peels, and I will put in a little bit of orange peel, but it's mostly the fruit. So of course I process the oranges in water and vinegar before using them. about 15 minutes. And instead of filling the whole sink, I use one of those plastic dish tubs. And then I can take the tub of water and pour it into the rose garden to save water. Water has gotten awfully expensive, and it always used to be cheap. Hmm. Oh, thank you, Strontium. Yeah, I think, I've seen people who will say, just walk me to your car and I'll drive. And I'm going, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I'll walk home if you're going to drive drunk. Mm. Anyway, I also tend to be a binge drinker. If I have 2 drinks, I don't mind having 6, and that's not good. Bad for your health. So I stop at 1. Unless it's a glass of wine with dinner and I'm not driving. The food kind of helps, and you're not guzzling, right? I don't guzzle alcoholic drinks, I sip. Like my coffee and my water. I've been going best part of an hour, and I haven't touched on anything woo woo or controversial. Yes, I have masks that I use. I don't worry about getting COVID. But, even though I have a right to walk out my front door without wearing a mask, every store, every post office, every whatever, every home, whoever owns it has the right to require me to wear a mask. Our constitutional rights go both ways. It's their property, not mine. And if they want me to wear a mask, I will. Not a big deal. I'll be there a few minutes, and when I leave and I'm outdoors by myself, I can take the mask off. I don't care. Um, it isn't a constitutional right to enter somebody else's property and not follow their rules. You're free not to shop at Rite Aid, not to shop at Walmart, not to shop at Target if you don't like their rules for masks. Now, in my county in particular, the death rate is barely over 1%, and it's been falling steadily. So it really is just like any other flu. Plus, we have a large percentage of our population who get the flu shot every year. And apparently, even though it wasn't a COVID vaccine, the flu shot did give people some immunity. And some is better than none. SARS-CoV-2, they call it now. I guess they didn't like COVID-19. 19 for 2019 when it was discovered. But I had something nasty last December, and I don't get the flu. I had the flu once in 1968 or 9. It was either December of 68 or January of 69. But I had it last December, and it was nasty. I came this close to calling 911 when I finally got myself to where I could breathe by deliberately coughing and then realizing, hey, my doctor prescribed these inhalers, which I have not been using because I don't need them. Well, I had been using the one that you take a puff every day, but I had the emergency inhaler, which was a different thing entirely for asthma attacks. So between deliberately coughing to get gunk out of my lungs and using the inhaler and drinking large quantities of water because I was pretty sure I was dehydrated first thing in the morning, I got to where I could breathe, and I thought, I'm not going to any danged hospital. I can breathe now. But I did isolate myself because I knew it had to be contagious, whatever it was. Anyway, I had to quit the daily inhaler thingy, the Flovent. It's some kind of steroid. I was getting a sore throat, a painful sore throat with no other symptoms, which means that the steroids are doing something bad to your throat. But I keep the emergency inhaler just in case. Well, they finally admitted that this new virus is a close cousin to the SARS virus that they panicked us about a few years ago. Sudden acute respiratory syndrome virus. So, it had some kind of SARS. But I'll bet you after going through the actual disease, I'm immune for years. If you survive the actual disease, it's even better than a vaccine. Oh, I don't know. Some coronaviruses give you the flu, some coronaviruses give you the common cold. And one of the deaths have been in nursing homes, almost half in nursing homes. And when you add in other long-term care facilities and prisons, it's well over half the deaths are in situations where people are crowded, and especially nursing homes because they didn't isolate the people who were sick. They couldn't. They were not equipped for that. And in New York, in particular, New York City, they forced the nursing homes to take patients who had COVID but were released from the hospital because they were not going to die. Talk about a population that's at high risk. That'd be people in long-term care facilities, nursing homes, which are, even the nursing homes are not great. They're places where you want to get out as soon as you possibly can. It's where people go to die. You might as well go to a hospice. You can get hospice care free as long as you agree that you're just getting comfort or palliative care while you die. Anyway, yeah, it's a novel coronavirus. It's different, but if you're immune to the flu, you have some immunity to it. COVID. I'm still really happy that I have my other bookcase behind me. So you can see, oh, there's two more bookcases over there, but the big ones are behind me now. Anyway, I, s- I got rid of about 6 boxes last week, emptied them, repacked the keepers, and tossed out the yuck, the stuff that was like, why am I keeping that? Plus the cat hair, spider webs, dust, um, etc., and old documents that I had to shred. You know, can't just toss out your important documents. You really need to shred them first. About 10 years ago, someone got hold of some documents related to my house, but at the time my credit rating was so bad that they couldn't get a loan on it. And I don't have that house anymore. It was in foreclosure at the time. See, I had two houses. This one was a rental. Well, the crash hit, the renters couldn't pay me, and as it turned out, I was better off to keep the rental house and let the other one go. I also gave Toyota Financial, so I got through with help from friends, family, and so forth. But I don't have a whole lot of property, but I have good neighbors, good friends, and Social Security, which is almost enough to pay the bills, but not quite. I'm hoping that they will do a second stimulus check because I'm going to need it to pay my property taxes. The taxes keep going up no matter how poor people are. It's horrible. Someone posted one of those memes or cute image on Facebook. It shows the Monopoly game board, and it says, when you start the game, one guy has all the property plus 95% of the money in the bank. You lose immediately. It must be because you're lazy. Well, of course it isn't because you're lazy. It's because the game is stacked against you. We work all our lives, at least I did, starting in high school, trying to provide for our families and for our retirement and maybe leave something for our children. And these trust fund kids have no clue. Their biggest decision is how to spend $1,000 at the mall. And they aren't even the worst of it. These old people who never seem to die, who manipulate the stock market, manipulate the currency exchanges. They even manipulate the various tax systems. They get a tax credit for this and a tax credit for that. I can't even write off my medical bills because they aren't, you know, you put it on the form and you find, oh, it has to be a certain percentage of your income, and then you can only write off 20% of what you spend on medical bills. And you go, I'm better off taking the standard deduction. And frankly, for me personally, the standard deduction is more than I earn in a year. My Social Security is so little that I don't owe income taxes on that. You see, I had a 401k, lost it in the crash. It went down close to zero, so I at $900, and they withheld income taxes from it. Even though I said I was exempt, they withheld it anyway. Got it back a year later. Whoopee. So I don't have that much Social Security income. I'm pretty close to the absolute minimum. Now, I wish I had a trust fund, but when you have everything handed to you, you're just clueless. It doesn't mean necessarily that you're a bad person, you just don't know. I mean, they'll know that people in Africa and India and so forth, and you know, back what we call backward nations around the world, they'll understand that those people are bad off, and they are. Now, it used to be just after World War II when the economy was booming, being poor meant you didn't have a colored television. You only had a black and white set. And yeah, you had to get your clothes from the equivalent of Kmart, but you could afford to buy them. You couldn't go to Saks Fifth Avenue. But now I'm seeing more and more people who are homeless because they couldn't make their rent. All it took was one illness or one injury or the loss of a job for whatever reason. And they got evicted and couldn't come up with deposits to rent another place. And the thing is, they won't go to the shelters because they are not allowed to take their pets. So finally, some shelters are allowing people to take a dog or a cat, which has helped. And in our community, we've been having massive food giveaways. The local grocery stores and farms have been donating all kinds of good stuff. The USDA, we used to call it government cheese because they usually had like Velveeta, but without the Velveeta label. But trust me, it was Velveeta cheese, food, and butter, and maybe some eggs. Now, the USDA food is mostly canned food that, well, yeah, I kind of like the beans. I do love beans, but I can only eat so many canned beets, canned pears, canned peaches, and they have these big, big cans, like 20-ounce cans of imitation spam. It doesn't have a label, but the word pork is printed on the can. I opened one and it was like spam, but round and big. And like, yeah, I like to fry up a slice of spam. serve it with some pineapple chunks, and I can put it through the meat grinder with some pickles and make a sandwich. But my God, it isn't even real spam. It's imitation spam. And I can only eat so much of it before I'm sick of it. Oh, and sometimes they have a can of beef stew that isn't half bad. It's like Hormel or Libby, but you can tell it's canned by the flavor. And but this food giveaway, they go to each community on the mountain with cardboard box of assorted produce, and you can get a loaf of bread and a dozen eggs and some canned food, and you really get good stuff because it's from the stores and the farms, not USDA is just whatever's surplus, whatever they couldn't sell. You know, they subsidize some of the producers by buying up products that didn't sell. So the manufacturers' warehouses, after this, they've fulfilled the orders from grocery stores, will send the rest to the USDA and get some money for it. And then USDA gives it away to food banks. But these local people have really stepped up. And cars will line up around the block. You know, you have to wear your mask and come with your car. Now, you can come on foot, but you need some kind of cart or wagon to carry the food home. I went once and I just wanted to get some bread and eggs, but they insisted that I take everything. I had my walker. I was having trouble with my knee again, so I had them stack it up on the seat of my walker. It's one of those nice walkers. It's the sports model with a seat so you can turn around and sit down. And it has handbrakes and everything. It was really awesome. But there's only one of me. I can only eat so much. So anyway, um, yeah, in our community, people are getting fed. See, I don't have a car. It saves me hundreds of dollars every month, especially in California. Even if your car is an old clunker, it's a small fortune to register it every year. Plus, you have to have insurance, buy gasoline, get your car repaired, get tires, oil changes. Can't do it. My son would give me a car, but I can't afford to keep one. He's been supplementing his income by buying cars, fixing them up, and reselling them. He is a pretty darn good mechanic, too. He went to motorcycle school in Arizona and he was the top of his class, valedictorian. Even he had he was one of the very few who were allowed the class on how to repair the Harley Davidson. You have to be really dedicated to get into that class. So anyway, yeah, the Philip K. Dick Testamentary Trust is not paying his children very much. They all work for a living. I'm sure the lawyers and Hollywood producers are very happy. because they're getting paid. Oh well. See, I thought I was set when I was back when I was a renter. My grandmother left me $30,000. I used it for a down payment on my house, the one that I lost in foreclosure. Well, I didn't use all of it. I also started a little retail shop, which failed. And I try to say no regrets. I had a learning experience. But, you know, that was back in 98. That money's long gone. So I'm working on books all the time. And I'm really trying to finish this um, book about the exegesis of Philip K. Dick, but it's more work than I thought it would be. Plus, I keep coming across new research that I have to include. It's semi academic. I expect it to be readable, but it will have footnotes and it will refer to things other people have written as well as the at least the published form of the exegesis. So I better get back to writing. I've gone well over an hour and it is a lovely day and I do have laundry to hang out on the clothesline and weeds to pull in the back 40. That's the back 40 feet, by the way. I'm going to pop out the chat because I have a feeling that it might have frozen on me. There might be some comments I haven't seen. Oh, what the hiss? I lost it. I tried to move it and it disappeared on me. Here we go. Okay, it looks like I didn't miss anything. You're all wonderful, and I'm really thrilled and delighted when you listen. And I got 2 thumbs up. Well, I did release a preview edition on Amazon Kindle for 99 cents. It's just a very small part of the work in progress, but it will give you a taste of what it's going to be. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free. It's called The X in Exegesis. That will not be the title of the book when it's finished. It will have a slightly different title, but the word exegesis will be in it. Anyway, I really gotta go. See, let's see. Catch you on the flip flop. That's something I heard in this old song called Convoy. Thank you, Carolina. Okay, where's the button? Here we go. Right there.